Hello everybody, it is Deltre, and today we are back with something different. We're going to be playing one of my all-time favorite games ever made, the old school Sega Genesis classic beat-em up, Streets of Rage. The first one. Now, if you've never played this game, just stop watching this video right now. I know that's a really bad thing for somebody to say, but honestly, stop the video right now. Go download this off Xbox, go download this off PlayStation. There's a really fantastic remake of this game that somebody had made. I think it was like a team of really hardcore fans of this game. They made an entirely new, updated version of this, and although I have not played it, I have heard it is fantastic. The point I am trying to make here is that if you have not played this game, what are you doing with your life? What are you doing with your life, man? This game should be played by everyone. I have made it a personal goal of mine in my life, and this is true. If I meet somebody and they have not played this game, I played this with them. A few years ago, I have a buddy, I guess I should say, who didn't own a Sega Genesis growing up. And I still have a Sega Genesis. I still have this game. We sat down, took an afternoon, played the shit out of this game, and he loved it. He had never played anything on Sega really before, and he loved it. That's the point I'm trying to make. This game is fantastic. Go get it now. And that intro, man, that intro is so iconic to me. Gets me every single time. Makes me ready to go. But can we point out that bonsai is not, in fact, a hobby? Is it just me? Anyways, I'm actually doing this one in post-commentary, which is not something that I usually do. But I found that trying to play this through... I'm playing this through on hardest mode, by the way. I found that playing through this on hardest while actually trying to maintain some kind of pace with commentary was next to impossible. This game is not easy by any means. You can see there we've dropped into the first stage, and I have selected Blaze as my player character of choice. The difference between all the characters is not all that much, truthfully. Adam is the slowest, and he's actually the person that I used to play as the most. He is the slowest, he has pretty good jumps, and he is relatively strong. Axel is just as strong as Adam, but his jump is terrible. To make up for that, though, he's a bit faster. And then we have Blaze here, who's the character that I've chosen, who is the fastest of characters, although she is a little bit weaker with certain attacks. It's not very noticeable, and on hardest mode, I honestly felt like the speed was pretty good. I tried to play through this as Adam at first, because like I say, that's who I always picked. He was my dude back in the day. I got body bagged on to like stage 3. I got wrecked. I wasn't even about it. So I played through again as Blaze, made it pretty far. I didn't beat it. Let me tell you that right now. I did not beat it. This game is crazy in the later stages. You can see right now it starts out pretty simple, but trust me, that will change all too soon. And even then, this first stage can be pretty dangerous if you're not careful. The game itself is actually pretty simple to play, but I think that's almost a good thing for this one. You only have a few different options. You can punch, do like this sort of combo move that you see me doing a lot of the times, where you can do a few punches in a row and then you'll lead into a kick. And then you usually have some kind of finisher. That's the same thing for all three characters, although the actual attack themselves change depending on who you use. Blaze does 2 punches and a kick, followed by a kickflip, which is metal as fuck, might I add. Let's see. Oh, I thought I was about to do it right there. I guess not. You also have a few other options that you can use. You can grab people and typically pummel them a little bit for some extra damage, and you can do a variety of throws. Well, not really a variety of throws. Don't want to hype this game up too much. It's a great game, but it's a little bit simple. You gotta give it some slack. It's 91. When you grab an enemy, though, you can either do this sort of suplex move if you're behind them, or you can do a backwards throw. And those two moves are pretty powerful. They help you clear out enemies really fast, help you create distance, and they do the most damage out of any of your options, really. So you'll see me doing that a lot, especially the back throw. When I want to clear out lots of enemies, or if I'm trying to hit somebody behind me, you can like throw enemies into each other, which is awesome, and it feels great when you get to do that. It's definitely something you want to keep in mind, though, especially if you're playing this on the higher difficulties, because being surrounded is the last thing you want. It's the absolute last thing you want. It's pretty much a guaranteed hit, which can very, very easily drain 90% of your health if you're unlucky. So you gotta really keep up on where the enemies are. You gotta keep up on what's happening on screen at all times. And even though this game is quite simple in terms of what you do, that does not make it easy by any stretch of the imagination. We're coming up on our first boss here already. Wait for it. Pop. Gotta get in with that disrespect. I don't know why I did that. I have no idea why I did that. This guy can be pretty tricky if you don't know what you're doing. He has a few different attacks. Namely, he will kick you in the fucking jaw, and it takes about half of your health. You also see that he's got a boomerang there, which he can throw, and as you might imagine, it will come back to him. So just because he's thrown it does not mean you're safe to approach. But we don't see any of those attacks because he gets completely wrecked in about 10 seconds flat. Yeah, I've played this game once or twice. Anyways, moving right along, we're going on to round 2, the Alley of Rage. First level was the Street of Rage, this is the Alley of Rage. So it starts off a little bit trickier right off the bat. The enemies are a lot more aggressive than they were in stage 1. And I'm getting my ass beat right off the bat on the first screen of this stage. So you can kind of see that this game doesn't really play around. I don't actually remember being all that bad on the lower difficulties. But I think that when you're playing hardest, there are more enemies, and it feels like they're maybe a little bit more resilient. Like, they take more hits. At least it feels like that. I don't remember it being quite so rough out the gate. Now, once you start getting into, like, stage 5 and stage 8, you might as well just kiss your ass goodbye, because those stages are impossible. I defy you to show me a playthrough of somebody doing any of that damageless. Now, I'm sure that, like, 6 people will be like, they'll post up videos in the comments about how I'm just trash at the game, and you're probably right. I'm not very good at this game. I don't claim to be an expert or anything. This is not like a deathless run or anything crazy. Oh, this is a complete tangent, but I completely neglected to mention the fact that you can actually do one more attack. You have a third option where you can do some sort of backwards attack. Like, you see me sometimes, I will kick behind with Blaze, and you can do that by pressing both jump and attack at the same time, which it's a pretty useful ability. Blaze's is probably the best, possibly Axel's. Axel's is stupid fast. Axel's is stupid fast. He's not as good in this game as he is in Streets of Rage 2, where he's actually broken. And I'm not playing around at all. In Streets of Rage 2, you can just use his Grand Upper over and over and over and just immediately win the game without even trying. But this game is still pretty good. His backwards attack is nearly instant, so even though it has a lower range, it's still very useful if you're about to get attacked from behind or something like that. And we just saw me do it there. I usually just do it when I'm trying to disrespect an enemy or something like that. Just because it's funny to me. Don't even have to look at him to take him out. These guys are a bunch of jokers, as far as I'm concerned. Now, you gotta be careful of these yellow guys a little bit, because they can throw you, and that's not really the end of the world at this point. I don't believe we've seen that yet. But just know that later on, in certain stages, it can be terrible if you get thrown in a certain way. Oh, these Kung Fu guys. These Kung Fu guys are absolute nightmares, let me tell you. Right now he's not so bad, but usually they show up in groups of about 3 to 4, and they have this really annoying flying kick attack it's really fast, and if you're not watching them, it's gonna hit you. And if it hits you once, they continuously do it over and over and over again until you either knock them down or dodge enough of them. It's very strange. The AI in this game it's not terrible, but you gotta remember, this is a Genesis game, so their strategies that the enemies use are a little bit limited. You can only really ask for so much, honestly. This game is good fun either way, as far as I'm concerned. By now you've probably noticed that sometimes weapons will appear on the stage, like bats, pipes, knives, bottles that you can use to hit enemies with. I kind of don't like those so much on the higher difficulties because they're so much slower than just attacking with your fists. And this game is called Bare Knuckle in Japan, so I feel bad if I wasn't fist fighting 95% of the time. The thing is, with these secondary weapons though, the main thing that really annoys me about them is when they're on the ground, oftentimes you'll pick them up by accident when you're just trying to punch the guy in front of you. And I can't tell you how many times that happens to me on an average playthrough of this game. If I had one complaint about this game, if I had to pick one thing that I did not like about this game, it would be that. It'll mess you up. It's messed me up in so many different attempts to play through this game, especially ones that you will not be seeing because this is the finished run. Spoiler alert, it happens even in the last boss fight. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away at all. It's probably worth talking about these juggling enemies too, because they're quite a nuisance. You can't really attack them head on. You can hit them at a very, very specific angle, which you saw me do on the first one. But generally they can just run through you. And even when you hit them, like I just did there, you have to be careful because the axes that they're juggling, or the other guy had like fire sticks that they're juggling, can still hit you as long as they're on screen. We're coming up to boss number 2 though. Souther. First guy's Antonio, this guy is Souther. Looks more like Freddy, though, to me, honestly. I always thought this guy looked exactly like Freddy Krueger. Tell me he does not. He's got the claws and everything. Speaking of Souther, he's a very, very strong boss. He will hit you hard. He's very fast. When you turn your back to him, he charges you like you can kind of see him doing there. And unless you get the spacing just right with Blaze's kick, he's going to hit you. That's a lot harder than it looks, by the way. Actually timing that, you have like a split second. I don't know exactly how long it is, but it can't be more than a couple of frames. You have to be dead on when you're doing that. We managed to take him down, though, after only losing 1 life. Which, you know, not too bad, not too bad. I can do better, though. I can do better. We'll be seeing him again, don't you worry. Moving right along to this funky beat, we're gonna step onto the Beach of Rage, Stage 3. From here on out, the enemies start to get a little bit tougher. We're gonna see more of those Kung Fu guys, and the guys have ditched their blue jackets for green ones, which somehow gives them more health. Don't ask me how that works, just video game logic, really. You change your colors and you become more powerful for your troubles. If only there were a way I could change Blaze's colors to make her more powerful. Maybe green wouldn't be a bad color on her, I don't know. I guess we'll see about that later. Honestly, this stage isn't all that bad. The main thing here is these Kung Fu guys, and later on you'll see more of those whip ladies. I don't know what you call them. I'll be honest, I usually just call them hookers. I have my next door neighbor friend to blame for that. When we were little, he was a little bit older than me. Had a little bit seedier of a vocabulary than I did. It's just kind of ingrained in my mind to call these whip ladies hookers from now on. I can't be the only one that sees it, right? I can't be the only one that sees it. I guess it's okay though, because they're the bad guys, so we can beat them up just fine. At this point, you probably want to start doing a little bit more comboing on the enemies. Now, this game doesn't have a combo system per se. It's not like a Street Fighter or anything, you know, or a Mortal Kombat or a Killer Instinct. I kind of like me some Killer Instinct, I'm not gonna lie, but it's nothing like that. It's just really basic stuff. But by choosing to not finish your combo, you can actually get more hits on the enemies, and that's a good thing because their health starts to really pick up at this point. Nothing too insane, but basically the more enemies you can take out, the better for you. I mean, obviously it's a beat 'em up. That's the whole goal. Destroy all the enemies, beat all the bad guys, make them cry. But it's really, really useful to do that because when you're getting attacked by multiple enemies from multiple angles, I personally find it very difficult to keep track of what's going on the screen. So that's why you see me, not so much right now, but later on in the game, I'll start slowing down a little bit so that I'm not triggering every enemy in the game. You see that turkey right there? I remember this part. See that turkey right there? I completely forget about that. I'm too busy focusing on these Kung Fu dudes, which you can see, they like to attack in groups, and that can kind of be used to your advantage because if you can stun one of them in the group, they usually wait for you. Now here's where I use my special. I forgot to talk about this actually, believe it or not. By hitting the C button by default, you can do a special attack where you call for backup, and it arrives in the form of a police squad car with a fucking rocket launcher. I repeat, a police squad car with a fucking rocket launcher. I don't know what the state of this city is like, okay? I don't know why they would have this. But if they have rocket launchers, why the hell am I out here on the streets risking my life when I can just blow Mr. X the fuck away? That's what I would like to know. Somebody explain that to me. You know what's crazier? If you're playing this in 2 players, the second person calls a police squad car that uses a Gatling gun. A Gatling gun? Why do they have this? What is this for? I always really like that rain effect there. It obviously doesn't look like much today, but back in the day, that was a nice little touch. It's a nice little detail. Gives the stage some character. And you know, for such a basic game, for such basic ideas, the backgrounds are really nice. Like, every stage feels different. There's always some sort of little gimmick or some kind of mix-up that keeps it more interesting. It keeps you more aware. And by the way, I cannot believe that I died to a scrub right there. That was embarrassing. That was embarrassing. You should have heard the rage on that one. You should have heard the rage on that one, man. I was not happy with that, let's just say. I know it's not just me, though. I don't care who you are. You could be the nicest person there ever was. Sit down in front of Streets of Rage for an hour and see if you're not swearing like a sailor by the end of it, man. It's just that kind of a game. It's really intense. Speaking of, Abadede, the third boss. This guy is pretty easy, actually, if you can get him in, like, I don't really want to say it's a loop, because he can very easily break out of it. But as long as you're keeping up with him, you can take him out. He's always going to do the same thing. He's always going to charge you. If you're close to him, he's going to grab you and throw you. Now you can see that you're actually able to save yourself from a throw if you press up and jump at the same time, right before you hit the ground. I think you can just hold the buttons and save yourself, but I try that later on and it costs me some health, so I usually just time it, personally. You can see there that he does a metric fuckload of damage if he hits you, by the way, so you definitely don't want to mess around. The bosses are all incredibly powerful. Now right there, I don't know how I pulled that off. If you approach him at the perfect angle, with the perfect timing, you can actually grab him when charging you, and I think I was just trying to flex a little bit right there, I'm not going to lie, but I ended up getting it, and that's going to round out stage 3. Now we're going on to stage 4, has my personal favorite theme, the Bridge of Rage. Now I can't believe this, but I haven't really talked about the music all that much by this point now, have I? It's all fantastic. There's not a bad track in the bunch. This game has overall one of the best soundtracks, really, of any game ever. When was the last time you have seen a game that was so confident in its sound design that it puts the sound, like, director, or like the music producer, on the title screen right next to the publisher of the game itself? You know, not even something like Final Fantasy, a game renowned for its fantastical soundtracks and great musical scores. Not even a game like Final Fantasy puts Nobuyo Uematsu on the front screen, you know what I mean? It's one of the first things you see, and for good reason. Now, I'm not exactly an expert on what exactly a Sega Genesis is and is not capable of, but to me, a soundtrack like this is astounding. Not just this game, but especially Streets of Rage 2 and 3. I don't know, I gotta hand it to them. I gotta hand it to them because it really feels like it should not be possible for a Sega Genesis to sound as good as this game does. But here we are, right? These tracks have stuck with me for many, many years, and I'm a huge fan, I'll be honest. I also really like the remix tracks that appear in the remake of this. If I didn't mention, the remake is actually Streets of Rage 1, 2, and 3, so it's like, and it's also free. It's also free, so it's a fantastic deal. So if you're still watching this and you have not played this game, I'm telling you, pause this video, come back to it if you really want to. It's not even that exciting. I'm not even all that. But stop the video, go play the game, download the game, whatever. Come back and then revel in this game's glory alongside me, okay? Can you do that for me? Thanks. This level right here is where the game starts to pick up a little bit. Not even gonna lie, I'm getting surrounded on all sides. Enemies coming out left and right. They're getting pretty strong. Almost all these guys are green right now. The whip ladies got upgraded as well, those fucking hookers. And things are getting pretty crazy, you gotta admit. But this is exactly why this game is so good. This kind of screen right here embodies everything right with this game. Beating a screen like this is so satisfying in ways that you can't even really understand unless you played the game. God damn you, juggler. God damn you, juggler. Sorry. But I'm serious. This kind of thing right here is what this game is all about. Taking on hordes and hordes of enemies with nothing but your fists, your wits, and a few basic things that you could do to hold your own. And somehow it's incredibly satisfying, incredibly fast-paced, incredibly... It's awesome! It's just awesome. It's amazing. And it really just goes to show that more shiny bells, shiny whistles, that kind of thing, graphics, whatever, that's not really what makes the game. What makes the game is how fun it is at its core. And Streets of Rage is one of those games, one of those series even, that really succeeds in that, in the way that it's just a solid game. You know, it's just a solid game. This game would be good no matter what you did to it, as long as this basic formula was executed in the way that it is. You know, I keep saying simple because it so much is. It's a very simple game, but it just feels so well designed at the same time. Like right from the first screen, you know, there's no crazy tutorial, there's no overbearing text or anything. You're just dropped into the stage, there's nothing around you, so you have plenty of time, plenty of free space to get your bearings, learn the controls. The first guy you fight is a one-on-one fight, so you have plenty of time to learn what you can do, what you can't do. And then it just really ramps up from there, and it really tests, it just continues to test you along the ways, right? It gets more difficult progressively. And by the way, fuck this screen, I was not doing this. I'm gonna use my special here. If I haven't pointed this out, I'm not actually using specials on the bosses, even though it's a perfectly valid tactic to do that. The reason that I choose not to, or the reason that I decided not to at the beginning of the playthrough, was because eventually in the last stage you can't use specials at all. And I felt as though if I were relying on the special attacks just to get through the regular boss fight, there was no way in hell I was going to beat the game. There was no way in hell I was gonna beat the game. If you can't actually beat the bosses fair and square, legit, or whatever you want to say, if you can't do it the normal way, you're basically hosed. And that's another thing that I was kind of getting to. This game really rewards skill and really rewards you knowing what you can do within terms of the game, despite the fact that it's pretty basic. Now here we have boss number 4, Bongo. Here's another little mix-up the game likes to do. You've seen me rely on throwing attacks and whatnot plenty throughout this playthrough so far, right? You can see that Bongo, he's a big guy. He likes to eat, let's say. If you try to throw out, if you try to throw this boss, he falls on you and he deals a shit ton of damage. He takes like 80% of your life. Now, you gotta keep in mind that the damage is inflated because I'm playing on hardest, obviously. But it's so hilarious to see Blaze try to suplex this guy only to get crushed. I always thought that was hilarious to me as a kid, and it's hilarious to me now. I don't do this, obviously, even though it would be funny to show off. I don't do it because I don't want to die. I'm doing pretty decent so far. We take out yet another boss without losing a life, but believe me, I'm going to need every single one of them if I'm going to try to beat this game. You do have 3 continues, but of course, me being me, I want to do this without having to continue if I can. I guess we're going to see how that goes later on, but we're going to move on now to Stage 5. Probably the hardest stage in the entire game, the Boat of Rage. Well, that didn't take long. Yeah, I like to use the special at the very first screen of this stage, just because you get surrounded right off the bat. And that's not even all the enemies in this section, by the way. That's just the first wave. You get surrounded, and you don't really have too much in the way of dealing with it. Later on, there's a similar section, but you have a mech, so you can potentially make some use of that. That's really the only time that I like the weapons in this game, is for a screen like the one you'll see coming up shortly here. But after you use the special, or if you're a madman and you take on that first wave with nothing but your fists, you have to deal with these assholes, and they all have knives. God, I hate the knife guys. First of all, they look goofy as fuck. Who does this? Who uses a knife in such a way? I've never seen this before in my life. It's almost like an in-joke between fans of this game. The way that the knife-wielding enemies look is just so ridiculously goofy and just so unwieldy. I guess that was sort of maybe an attempt to downplay the violence, I guess, because you can't stab somebody like that. It wouldn't work. And I guess maybe they didn't want to show like a more realistic depiction of that, but to me it's just hilarious. It's just so silly. It's too ridiculous to take it seriously, you know what I mean? Anyways, we're coming up on that section that I was talking about where I'm going to be surrounded and I'm going to get my ass beat. There's that bat that I was going to attempt to use here, but you're going to see in a few seconds that I completely screw the pooch on that one. Completely mess it up. So here we go. There's like 8 guys. They all appear out of nowhere. I started off pretty strong, but I dropped the bat. And once you drop a weapon a certain number of times, it disappears. And here I'm thinking, alright, just pick my god and pray. I just start jumping and kicking. That's really all I can do. I'm going to take another death here any second now. Yeah. Again, you really don't want to get surrounded because that's what happens. That's exactly what happens if you're surrounded. But now, I have them all on one side. Now we can have some fun. This right here was so fun. This is another one of those times where the game is just like stupid, mindless fun. Just taking out like 5, 6, 7, 8 enemies in quick succession like that. Can't be beat. Can't be beat. Right after that hellish screen, though, we're coming up to some of my least favorite enemies in the entire game. It's these hookers, but now they have one more annoying gimmick. You hit them once, and sometimes they will sort of... I don't even know what it is they're doing. They just like crouch down on the ground like, oh, please don't hit me. And you can't do any damage to them when they're like that. It's the most obnoxious thing in the entire world. The only good thing that came out of that was... I guess this needs some context, but this game actually has a big enough following that a group of dedicated fans took it upon themselves to create sort of like a live-action tribute to Streets of Rage. And it's the most hilarious, cheesy, yet incredibly awesome thing you've ever seen. If you're a fan of this game, it's hilarious, and it made for a really funny scene with these leather-wearing hookers or whatever you want to call them. I think they're called Electros in the second game, if I'm not mistaken. But it made for a really funny scene in that. But insofar as gameplay, it's the most obnoxious thing, because the only real viable way of dealing with them is to hit them with grappling. You gotta grab them and pummel them and throw them, and it's really, really annoying, especially when there's multiple enemies to take care of at the same time, or when they come in large groups like that. That first wave has 5, 6, maybe even 7 of them. I'm just glad to be done with them for now, so I take out my rage on this red one. She does not have the same property where she'll kneel down and become invulnerable. So at the very least there's that, although later on they do start to be that way, even the red ones, and there's a white variation of them as well, and they're all equally obnoxious. It's frustrating, but you kind of have to deal with it. Whoa, suddenly Kung Fu dudes. That always tripped me up as a kid. I thought that was cool how they jumped over the side of the boat like that, but it doesn't really make any sense that they would be able to do that. Are they clinging to the side of the boat? If so, how are they able to jump 15 feet in the air? And if they're not clinging onto the side of the boat, does that mean that they're jumping out of the water? Oh, this annoyed me. I was so close to salvation, but I just barely missed out. That's one of the most heartbreaking things that can possibly happen to you in this game, when you're just so close to getting that next health refill, but you get bopped by some unfortunate attack. It really, there's nothing you can do about it though. There's no real point in staying mad, but it is a little bit frustrating. Abadede, yep, he's back. Challenged once more by the Ultimate Warrior. He's a little bit easier this time because you don't have to deal with the minions running around kind of messing up your mojo. I can't believe I haven't mentioned this, but if you're playing 2 players, there's actually 2 bosses every time you get to a boss encounter, with 3 exceptions. 3 exceptions to that rule. So I did say that this guy is actually very easy. However, if you're playing 2 players, this becomes a lot more challenging. I think this is still just one of them, correct me if I'm wrong. But when you're fighting 2 of them at the same time, keeping them in this kind of pattern is very, very tricky because they can charge you from different sides. So you have to really rethink what you're doing. If you can get them on one side, that's probably the way to go. Similar to just about every boss in this game. Oh, and by the way, I was like 2 hits away. I was mad about that. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I was mad about that. I know I just said don't get mad, but that's so heartbreaking. Here I'm just making a run for it. I do have a special, but I didn't want to use more specials that you get from dying. So I wanted to get to this point before I used this one. I wanted to gather up as many enemies as I could as well, just so that way that I can take out this entire screen at once. Because not only are there about 50 fucking Kung Fu guys, there's 4 jugglers that spawn once you reach the end of the screen. And that's absolute hell. You don't want to deal with that. You absolutely don't want to deal with that. Now, if you're not doing the whole don't use specials on bosses thing that I'm doing, you might want to save the 2 specials in the stage for this boss coming up, because it's hell. Oh, I'm telling you right now, it's hell. It's the worst, it's the worst thing, and I was definitely not looking forward to it. Now, I can say for sure that by playing this on hardest a few times, I managed to improve substantially from the way that I used to play this game. This next boss still bodies me. Puts me in a bag, sends me away, right off to the next dimension, man. It's horrible. It's horrible. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, though. We gotta take on these P signals and these green jacket wearing dudes before we even get to that. This stage is... I said at the beginning that I think is the hardest stage, and I really do. I don't even think that the final stage, with a few exceptions with regard to the final stage, I think this is by far the more challenging level. But here we go. I know fans of this game have been waiting for this one. It's Mona and Lisa for the stage 5 boss. Right off the bat, I get dropped on my neck. So we're off to a great start. The thing with these 2 is that they are insanely agile. They're so mobile, you will never be able to actually get a full combo on them. So it makes it very hard to damage them. The only real way to do it is to grab them, and I'm not good at doing that at all. So instead what's going to happen is I'm going to play this out the slow, painful way where I only get a few hits at a time. I think I do end up getting a few lucky grabs. I eventually realized that in order to grab them, you kind of want to approach them from below them right after they land from a jump kick, but I didn't know that at the time of playing this, so I really had no choice but to do it like this. Now, the best way to do this, in my opinion, is to just simply keep moving. You gotta keep moving. You gotta keep moving. If they manage to land a hit on you, you can see that it does 8 million damage. And by the way, I'm not nearly that strong, and I'm pretty sure they're just a recolored version of Blaze, so what's up with that? If they land behind you, they're gonna suplex you like you saw them do immediately at the beginning of the battle. one way to circumvent that is to make sure that you are always facing them, and I definitely recommend that you do that. If you learn nothing else from this, always 150,000% of the time face them. Because if you do, you have a chance to recover when they throw you. You can see there that they do the same backwards judo throw that Blaze does, and you can recover from that by doing the up B trick. But if they slam you down, there's no way to dodge it. Speaking of, there goes 2 lives. 2 lives to these chicks. They're so mobile, they're so agile, they can dodge almost everything you want to throw out. Again, I said, if you can manage to grab them, that's fine. But I didn't know how to do that. I'm actually managing to whittle them down. This is probably one of the better fights I've ever had with them. And thankfully for me, I caught that on camera, so that's pretty nice at the very least. If you can manage to take down one, the second one is pretty easy to deal with from there. But really, it's when they're on different sides of you that you're really in a bad spot. It's so hard to keep track of both of them. They jump around, they flip around. It's just a bad time. It's just a bad time, man. These two used to be... They still are, really. They're like the gatekeeper to this game. If you can't beat Mona and Lisa, you're not beating this game. Just straight up, you're not beating this game. I don't care how many extra lives you have. I don't care how many continues you have. I don't care what difficulty you're playing on. If you can't take on these two, you lose. You lose, straight up. One other thing that I could have been doing more is using Blaze's backwards kick, because you're going to see here, bop, for the maximum disrespect. It does work as sort of an anti-aerial on them, and it beats them out, basically. With only 2 deaths on that one, I'm pretty happy. I'll be completely honest. That's almost all I can ever ask for. They're so frustrating. If I made that look hard, just realize that it's actually 10 hard. It's 10 times harder than that. It's 10 times harder than that. Okay, I took a quick pause there to cut the video before heading off into the Factory of Rage, Stage 6. Now this one's actually, in my opinion, easier than Stage 5. I guess they figured after the bullshit that it's Mona and Lisa that you should probably have a little bit of a second to chill out, get your bearings, get back on track, earn some extra lives, because God knows you're gonna need it if you actually want to beat this thing. As you saw in the first area, or the first screen rather, the whole idea behind this place is that it is a factory, hence Factory of Rage. So you're going to be dealing with a lot of machine-like obstacles and stage hazards and whatnots. There's a few crushers later on in the game that you'll see me take advantage of, because God knows it's hella fun to crush enemies with those things. But the main thing that really annoys me about this is the conveyor belts. I really don't want to say they're annoying per se, but it is a little bit tricky to deal with them depending on what you're fighting and depending on the direction of the conveyor belt itself. They can be going both forward and backwards, so you have to pay attention to which direction you're moving so that you don't get pushed into an enemy, or so that you're not stuck struggling trying to run towards an enemy but never making any forward progress really. Also, you probably noticed that by this point the basic enemy has evolved into his final form, who, might I add, bears a striking resemblance to Lieutenant Surge from Pokemon, does he not? I swear, dude, same guy, different jacket. You'll see over there that those are some of those crushers that I was talking about. As you approach them, it triggers them and they will fall down, dealing damage to you if you're in the immediate area. However, you can also use that against the enemy, which is fun to do. It doesn't seem like it does enough damage. It feels like it should do a lot more damage than it actually does. Honestly, I think the suplex is stronger, but it's fun. It's definitely fun to get a group of enemies crushed under those by, like, triggering the crusher and then just watching them all die. It's good fun. It's a good time for everybody, I should think. Not really a whole lot going on with this stage, though, to be honest, other than those few mix-up stage hazards. Yeah, like I said at the beginning, it really does feel like this one's easier, barring a few things like our old friend Mr. Bongo here. But much like Abadede, he's by himself this time, so that means he's basically screwed. I think I said that Abadede appears by himself the second time you fight him, but I think that's wrong now that I'm thinking about it, because I remember getting to this point with my friend that I had mentioned that lived next door to me, and I remember this part of the game, and there's definitely 2 of the bongos that you have to fight, so I think even the mini-bosses themselves get multiplied when you're playing 2 players. So if you want a real challenge, play this game single player, but in 2-player mode. I thought about doing that. But I don't know, man. That seems a little bit too much for me. You'd have to be really hardcore to try that out. Maybe someday, but definitely not today. Definitely not today. You also see me start doing even longer combos. I mentioned this before, but you want to do that so that you can not only incapacitate enemies better because it keeps them stunned, but it also deals a lot more damage. By finishing off your combo, you actually send them flying. I'm sure you picked up on that by now. I've done it a few times just when I'm trying to distance myself from a large group of enemies. But it generally is in your best interest to keep them locked as long as you possibly can. And that might seem kind of lame, but it's actually more difficult than it looks, especially given the large number of enemies that there are at any given time. It's very, very difficult to actually just focus down one character for the most part. Sometimes the AI lets you get away with some serious supreme bullshit. Like what I'm doing right here, I have no idea why that second Electra isn't helping out at all. But usually, especially in melee segments where you're not really progressing forward in the stage and you don't have control over what enemies are appearing and when they're appearing, it becomes a lot more tricky and you have to be a little bit more tactical in your combat. Speaking of, it's worth saying that you probably shouldn't just mash when you're trying to play this game, even if you are trying to stun lock an enemy or do certain combos or whatever. You definitely want to time your hits. If you just mash, you actually end up being a lot slower than you would otherwise be. And that's gonna really, really cost you on the higher difficulties. I think you probably would be just fine on normal because, let's be honest, most kids mash, and I definitely did when I was playing this the first time. But if you want to seriously give this a try on a higher difficulty, or even if you just want to be able to beat the game, because honestly the game is quite hard, and being able to use every trick that you can is almost necessary just to beat the game. Now, I know you're looking at it like you still have 3 lives, you haven't used a single continue. How could this game be that hard? You know, you get a new special every time you die. Trust me, just trust me. This game becomes really, really ridiculous in the last segments. So you'd think you wouldn't be able to use your special attack on this stage, but no. The police squad car just rolls right up into the middle of this factory and fires off the hot one. I don't actually know how this works at all. And given that you can't use your special on the last stage, it's like a logistics thing that you wouldn't be able to, I don't understand how they didn't think to disable it on this stage at all. By the way, did you see that? That was absolutely brutal, Blaze. God damn, you didn't have to crush her with the goddamn machine. That's just harsh. No wonder these guys are all ex-cops. Probably got fired from the force for doing shit like this. Really though, with the machines, you have plenty of time to get out of the way, so you're almost never gonna be hit by them. All you have to do is, oh, and another one! Sorry. All you have to do is run under them real quick and then quickly juke backwards, and you're almost never ever gonna get hit by them. The worst thing that could happen is one of the yellow signals or purple signals, those funky dudes there, they might throw you into them, and that can be kinda dangerous. But the thing is, you have invulnerability when you hit the ground, so unless you save yourself, you're not getting crushed. It's just really, really hard for them to actually hit you. They're really more of a nuisance more than anything. Although, like I said, they're hella fun to destroy enemies with them. Been doing that the whole entire stage, and I have not been looking back. So I'm gonna burn the second special here because I decided not to use any specials on the bosses. Otherwise, you would want to save it for them. It is kind of a waste, but honestly, where else was I gonna use it? This is the last screen right here. It's one more melee section, and then it's on to the boss fight. And we'll be seeing an old friend, let's say, after I put down these scrubs real quick. It's really strange how in this section they tend to come one at a time. I really do think that it was an intentional choice by the developer to make this one easier. It had to be. It's the only thing that really makes any sense, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Because, I mean, look at that. There was a blue vested guy, one of the first enemies you see, then a Y signal, like the second enemy you see. And then this chick, she doesn't even have the... Actually, she does. She does do the annoying thing where she falls down. Either way, we're rolling in hot to round 6 boss. And it's gonna be Souther and Souther. Okay, this is really this can be really tricky. I'm not gonna lie to you. This can be very, very, very tricky if you're not careful. Like I said the first time, if you're not facing them, they're gonna charge you. I didn't mention this on the first round with this guy, but if you do a jumping attack, which you might be thinking is a good way to beat out his claw attack, if you do a jumping attack, he does this insane, ridiculous counter attack where he just basically goes insane. He goes crazy. and he's gonna hit you. He becomes completely invulnerable to damage. Lightning fast. I don't show it off because, again, I don't want to die. Speaking of which, I don't die at all. In fact, I do this fight flawlessly, which I was feeling pretty good about. But yes, if you're gonna learn anything from that fight at all, do not jump at him ever. Never jump at him. Try to take them on one at a time, separate them, and make sure that they're not parallel with each other, because if they're both on the same plane, it makes grappling them so much harder because their attacks are so quick, they can very easily knock you out before you're able to get a throw off. But enough of that, we're on to stage 7, the Lift of Rage. And with this stage here, we've officially checked off the last box on our list of mandatory beat-em-up level designs. We had the elevator stage right here, we had the bridge stage in the past, we had the factory stage. Gotta give it credit where credit's due, though. We did mix it up a little bit with the beach stage. Don't know too many of beat-em-up games that have that. Had the city stage, had 2 of them as a matter of fact. We had both the Street of Rage and the Alley of Rage after all. Now you can kind of see my main strategy on this one is to just throw and throw and throw and throw. We're seeing an excellent display of police brutality right here. Just throwing them all over the side of this lift. Like, goddamn, Blaze, I know they're the bad guys, okay? I know they've done some messed up shit, but good God, show some restraint, woman. I don't really think she knows the meaning of this word, though. This entire game I've been stabbing people, throwing them off buildings, beating them over the head with pipes, busting their heads open with bats. It's really it really makes you wonder who's the bad guy here, really. Once again, though, the stage is really not all that bad. The trickiest thing here is the fact that there's no health pickups throughout this entire stage, so any damage you take is going to be permanent. It's going to last all the way to the end of the stage. The other dangerous thing, the other very dangerous thing, as you just saw there, is the Y signals, and the P signals, and the G signals. They can all throw you. And as much fun as I'm having throwing enemies off this lift, it is not fun to get thrown off this lift. And believe me, that can happen to you. That actually happened to me while I was practicing this game. It doesn't happen to me in this run, thank God. Although I definitely have a few close calls. We'll see a few of those here in a second. But no matter what your life force is, you see right there. You see right there. That was so close. That was heart pounding. I thought I was done for sure. What I was saying though, no matter how much life you have, it doesn't matter. If you get thrown off the lift, you are done. And there's nothing you can really do about it. Even if you try to save yourself by landing, it's not like you can ledge grab or anything like that. This is a Sega Genesis, a 91 Sega Genesis game. So nothing of the sort there. You just have to kind of deal with it. And it's most certainly in your best interest to try and avoid that as best as you possibly can, because this is the second to last stage. I don't know if I've said this before or not, but there are 8 stages total in this game. And this is the second to last stage. So you need to conserve your lives as much as possible by this point. Now, there are a few tricky seconds on this level, despite the fact that you can basically instant kill every single enemy. Like, this one right here is a good example. The 2 hookers show up, and of course they have that annoying gimmick where they can't be attacked if you hit them in a certain way. So I'm gonna lose a life to that. Sitting pretty, though, with 4 lives and all of my continues still remaining. We're still on my first continue, first credit, whatever you want to call it. I say first continue. I haven't used any continues, but it's just one of those things, you know, some people say 1-up, some people say free man. Me personally, I say I'm on my first continue, even though I haven't technically used any. But regardless of that fact, you're going to need every life you can get. Typically, you will manage to earn enough lives through the points that you will get simply by completing the game, and you do get more points for beating a stage on a higher difficulty. Oh, by the way, you can use your special on this stage. Don't ask me how, but watch this. This police squad car rolls up under the building, fires his rocket up God knows how many stories, lands perfectly on this lift, and blows all the enemies away. Also, you notice that when the Kung Fu Masters landed on the lift, they kind of fell through. I don't know why that happens. It's just a funny quirk with using the special attack on this stage. Oh my god, so close yet again, but we hang on just barely. Now, if you don't manage to save yourself with the up and jump trick, you will actually bounce off the side of the lift and then fall to your death that way. So you definitely have to be careful about timing your safe landings when you're being thrown around on this stage in particular. It also kind of applies to the bridge stage as well, where there are holes that you can potentially fall in through and die. But as soon as this P signal walks out here, we're going to be done with this stage and on to round 8, the final stage of the game, the Halls of Rage. And in fact, the music on this stage is so good that I'm just going to be quiet for one whole loop of it, just because I really want you to take it in and understand why I think the soundtrack of this game is so amazing. Damn, this music is so good. Honestly, there's no final stage music in any other game that I played that has pumped me up to bust some heads nearly as much as this one here. It's just so very good. And I know, by the way, I know you guys saw me getting bodied by those tables. Those damn tables. The worst part is I've known about that for like 15, 20 years. And it still gets me every single time. Every single time. When I've played this earlier, off screen, you know, not recording or whatever, the tables got me. When I played it just now, the tables got me. When I played it when I was 5 years old, the tables got me. Also, pay close. Well, hold on. First of all, we have to put Antonio back in his place. I don't know what he's doing here. Spoiler alert, he still doesn't hit me this time. I probably shouldn't have said that. This was normally be an intense moment, right? I'm low on health. Looking pretty grim. We're getting down to the final area, though. I could maybe do this. I could maybe beat it. And we do. So there you go. A little bit of false suspense. What I was going to say, though, is pay attention to the background as you progress through the stage. Particularly out in the, out the windows. There we go. Dang. Struggling to find my words here. I never really noticed it as a child, but the further you progress in this stage, the lighter the backgrounds become outside. Like it's becoming day outside or something like that. Which is really, really cool, especially considering the fact that 95% of this game takes place at night. And here you are on the final stage, and it's like your journey has taken so long that it's finally becoming day once again, and you're coming down to the final battle here. It's getting down to the wire, but daylight is just around the corner. Dawn is right around the corner. It's a really cool idea. It's a really cool feeling, I guess. It's kind of what I'm getting at. You can see there in that window right there, it's even lighter than it was the last time. And it's just such a nice touch. It's just such a small detail that really makes this game feel polished, I guess. It's so silly to say that, I guess. Especially for such a small detail like that. But it is. It's the fact that the small details are there. Fuck you, table. It's the fact that the small details are there at all, you know what I mean? It really shows a lot of care was put into this, I think. Anyways, you might have guessed this, but what we have in this final stage is what is commonly known as a boss rush. I know, riveting stuff. But you know, normally, a lot of people could say that they're not really big fans of that. It feels kind of like a cheap way to extend gameplay. But the key difference here, by the way, what's up, Souther? I'm gonna put this guy down once more real quick. The key difference here, though, between this and a normal boss rush is the fact that it plays out differently for most people. So most people, when you're playing this game the first time, you're going to use your specials on the bosses, right? And you don't really have to learn their patterns and their behaviors all that much because you can just spam the specials. And even if they kill you, you just get another special, you know what I mean? So ultimately, a lot of people don't end up learning how to take on the bosses fair and square. But here in the final stage, because you can't actually use your special attack, because you can't call for backup, it actually really changes the dynamic of the fight quite a bit for most people. Now, if you fight them, like, just straight up, the first time you fight them, it might feel a little bit unnecessary to have to do it again. But I think it's a really good way to test whether or not the player has actually learned how to play the game or not. Because let's face it, the bosses are by far the most challenging part. Don't get me wrong, these random enemies can be pretty dangerous, especially on higher difficulties where you're fighting large numbers of them all at once and they're very aggressive and whatnot. But for the most part, it's the bosses that are really going to trip people up. So I think it's actually fair in this game to have a boss rush, just because it really checks to see if you know how to play the game, it checks to see if you really know what's up, or if you were just spamming your specials, you know. And hey, nothing against you if you do that. Nothing against you if you do that at all. This game is hard. This game is hard. But I definitely think it's fair to really see what you know. I think it's fair to really see if you know your stuff or not by this point, you know. You've had 8 stages of this. If you can't do it by now, then I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you. Anyways, third up, as you might have guessed, we have Day once more. The Ultimate Warrior coming back for one last ass pounding for the road. This time I actually managed to get him pretty well looped. And again, you might say that's kind of lame. I don't know how to grab him. I'll be honest. I really have no idea how to grab him. I managed to do it that one time, the very first time I fought him. But I'm willing to admit that that was more a fluke than anything, you know. I really don't know how to grab him that much, but I do manage to actually combo him a little bit to speed up the process, and that's probably the easiest way to do it. Keep in mind, if you mess that up even a little bit, if you're just even slightly off in your timing, you're going to take a huge hit. We already saw he deals about 80% of your health. And I think that does apply to Adam and Axel as well. I know that in future games, Blaze has a little bit less health than them, but I'm pretty sure it's just a flat amount of health in this game, so he's a really dangerous boss if you're not on point with your actions. So it's something to really consider. Now, from here on out, we're fighting the Black Kung Fu Masters, or the guys in the black gi or whatever, and they are so frustrating. They take lots of hits, and more importantly and more annoyingly, they have sort of what you would call a frame trap. So they have certain attacks that they can do, notably their kicking attack, where if you are positioned wrong, or if you're in the middle of an attack, or really just doing the wrong thing at the wrong time, like right there is a good example, they're going to hit you. Because they will do their jump kick while you're, for example, trying to throw an enemy, and they will just stay right above you and continuously kick and continuously kick and continuously kick. So even though you have that invincibility while you're actually executing the throw, the second you stand back up, you're just gonna walk right into their fucking foot. And that's what happens every time with those dudes. I hate them so much. I hate them so much, man. And there's nothing you can really do about it other than to try and take out the Kung Fu Masters first. It's just embarrassing getting beaten down by them, man. For crying out loud, they're wearing pajamas. It looks like they just got out of bed. And they beat my ass. Once you see this lady right here, though, you know you're in the clear. This is the final stretch. This is it, man. The last stop, the last station of this playthrough. That's how I always looked at it when I saw her. When I saw her, I knew I was in for a rough time, to be perfectly honest, because we still have one more boss if you've been keeping track. But once these hookers start showing up, you're basically good. If you've got a fair amount of continues left, or a fair amount of lives if you're actually good at this game, unlike myself, you might actually be able to pull it through. One more juggler for good measure. I'm just going to stun lock this guy like I do right here, but unfortunately I'd managed to trigger the next wave of Kung Fu Masters. And this is a pretty intense section, as I recall. I was feeling pretty good about myself after this one. I think I handled this pretty well because this can be very, very dangerous, particularly with that juggler behind you. Now, if you manage to get rid of him before that, and oh my gosh, stumbling over myself, getting a little tired. I'm not gonna lie, I shouldn't be recording this right now. It's very late. But if you manage to get rid of the juggler, this section is not hard. However, dealing with both the juggler and all of these Kung Fu Master Ninja Overlords at the same time can be very, very, very tricky. I think I do a pretty good job of handling it, though, all things considered. They actually weren't all that terrible to me this playthrough. Normally they can be much, much worse. It all just really depends on what you do initially as they spawn, as well as how you react to them. And there's really no other way to do it. There's not like a certain method that assures you victory every single time. A lot of this game really does come down to reaction and just pure skill and your ability to adapt to different situations. And your ability to adapt to some of the same situations, like these two chicks once more. God damn it, here we go. The most painful fight in the game. Now I think I actually come out really strong right out the gate this time. I'm doing lots of attacks, landing lots of good hits. I even managed to land a combo, believe it or not, but there, I flubbed the landing. I think at that point I was trying to do the hold up and jump to do a safe landing thing, but it doesn't work for me. Like I said, I usually just time it right before I hit the ground. I don't know what I was doing wrong in that case, but either way I take a huge hit that I didn't need to take. But I'm feeling pretty confident at this point. I'm doing lots of good damage. I'm getting lots of hits. I'm feeling pretty comfortable, basically. You know, I'm not feeling like I'm going to get hit. I'm keeping them both on one side. And most importantly of all, I'm managing to continuously face them. Even when they do manage to grab me, they can only do the front throw. They can't suplex me. So I'm staying alive. I'm doing good, and then time over. God damn these chicks. I didn't know what was really going on there, so I started pressing every button. The game actually does freeze up for a good second. I thought maybe the game was frozen or something. I was freaking out a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. But after that, to be perfectly honest, it trashed my mojo. It trashed my flow. I should probably talk about the final boss at this point, because I wanted to use the original recording and the original live commentary track for that, because I thought it would be more interesting to see how my live reaction to that was. And I don't actually talk about the fight itself very much during the final boss, for reasons that are pretty obvious if you played the game before, right? It's hectic, it's crazy, it's absolutely insane. You need 150,000% focus if you actually want to complete it. Now, I do have a fair amount of continues, so I don't think it's a stretch to say that it's pretty obvious that I'm going to beat the game. However, the final boss is still no joke. Even with all of my continues intact, a lesser experienced player or somebody playing it the first time, or even myself, if I wasn't at my 100% A game, could have easily lost with 10 lives. You know, the thing that makes him so tricky is the fact that all of his attacks feel as though they're almost instantaneous. Now, I shouldn't say all of his attacks. His dashing attack is almost instantaneous. So if you're not hitting him on the exact right second, you're gonna take a hit. And of course, like you might expect, he hits insanely hard. Compounding that, he has two infinitely respawning minions that are they're the Lieutenant Surge looking guys. So they take plenty of hits. It's hard to get rid of them, and they only stay gone for a few seconds once you do. And finally, he has a goddamn Tommy gun, and he will use it. So he's spraying across the screens. He hits his own guys. He's insane, it's an awesome touch. It's like saying he's so crazy, he doesn't care who he kills as long as you're one of them. You know what I mean? But all of these elements together make for one hell of a tough fight, not to mention the fact that he dashes around like a madman. He's absolutely the fastest enemy in this game, bar none. Even faster than Abadede, I would say. And when you combine that with his dashing attack, it's very hard to keep track of him. There's a lot of things going on at once, and it just makes for a hectic and crazy final boss. But with that said, I think I'm going to switch back to the live track from here on out, and that's going to bring us home. Okay. Had to wipe down the controller after that one. Can you blame me? This has been one hell of a ride, man. But here we are, the final stop. Make sure you say no there. If you don't say no, you go back to level 6, and that's not good. If I would have had like 3, 4, maybe 5 lives, I could have maybe potentially still gotten fucked by Mr. X. Because that's what's going to happen. I'm going to get destroyed. I should probably be focusing. Even these guys could be deadly if I'm not careful. I'm sure the fight will speak for itself, so I'm just going to focus on Merc and Lieutenant Surge here. Send the next two. Oh my gosh, destruction. Disrespect. Okay, I cannot have that happening in the fight. In the real fight. Because here we go, I need this cheap shot. No such thing with this guy. Just in case. Just stun him, just stun him, just stun him. Okay. Okay. Throw. Jump. Kick. No! The fucking pipe. Yeah, I don't even know why I tried to grab him. I know you have to stun him first. Okay, I don't know how I'm still in this, but I'm still in this, boys. Stun, stun, jump. Throw. Jump, kick. Come on, come on, come on! No way, no fucking way! Is this gonna happen? Oh! No fucking way! Yo! I'm dying. There's no fucking way I just did that. There's no. It's not like a perfect. I never got hit. It's not like a perfect. I never died. But you don't understand. Since I was like motherfucking 3 years old, this guy has been the ender of my life. Oh, yo. That is so much harder than I just made that look. That is so much harder than I just made. There's no fucking way. I will never be able to do that again. I will never be able to do that again. Please, for the love of all that is holy, tell me that this is recording, because I swear I will never be able to do that again. Yo. Yeah, hell yeah, name. Hold up. Hold up, how do I do this? It's been a minute. I usually just go A. Yeah, hold up. We're gonna preserve this in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. Yo. Hardest mode, 1 continue. Hardest mode, 1 continue. I never would have dreamt it. Never in a million years. I don't know what you're doing here, Blaze. Or not Blaze. Whoa, I know exactly what Blaze is doing here. What I would like to know is why Axel and Adam are suddenly showing up to take credit. Alright, I'm gonna shut up and just let the music play out. This game is fantastic. You should play it if you have not. See y'all later. Peace. 1 life, Mr. X. Yo.